So in the last post, I talked about social anxiety and how in treatment, we tend to focus on two major approaches. Cognitive work, where we look at what you're thinking about these social situations, and behavioral work, where you move toward the situations that you've been avoiding. In this post, I'm going to focus on the cognitive work. I'm not going to be detailed enough that this gives you the total picture, but it'll give you an idea. Here's the core cognitive model: situation, appraisal, response. Let's start at the end. The response is your reaction, and it's two things: how you feel and what you do, emotion and behavior. And in social anxiety, the emotion is, guess what? Anxiety. And the behavior is either the impulse to avoid or actually getting the hell out of there. Okay, now the situation, the beginning point. In the case of social anxiety, we're talking about some kind of social situation. You're giving the financial report for your committee, or you're going to your partner's holiday party, or you're taking a defective toaster back to the store and you have to talk to somebody. Now, if everybody reacted with exactly the same amount of anxiety in these situations, we'd say, fine. Those are just scary things to do, I guess. But they don't. People differ. Same situation, totally different response. So something else is going on. And it's here, in the middle. It's the appraisal. What are you predicting? How are you interpreting what's going on? So, the holiday party. One person thinks, hey, this will be fun. I get to meet these people my partner keeps talking about. Maybe it'll be lively, maybe it'll be boring, but whatever, I'll live. Another person thinks, they're going to see what a loser I really am. I'll turn out to have worn the wrong thing, and I'm going to stand out like a sore thumb. And nobody's going to talk to me. And people are going to think, wow, I would have thought they would have a better spouse than this. And they'll think less of my partner as a result. And then my partner's career won't go so great, and it'll be all because of me. And we'll probably have to do some stupid activity that I won't be any good at, and I will humiliate myself. And then they'll see that I'm uncomfortable, and they'll think I'm some kind of freak. And the result of all of this is going to be anxiety and an intense desire to avoid the party. Okay, great. What do we do in therapy? Well, in general, we'll try to get a sense of the various situations that evoke your fear. What kind of social situations bug you? And we'll list them. And then we'll pick one to really, really look at in detail, usually a recent one. And there's a weird principle about this, general thing about cognitive therapy. You'd think it would be best to go general. When I'm invited to parties, here's the kind of thing I typically think. But no, it actually works better to focus on a particular instance. When I went to the company picnic last Thursday, here's what I was thinking. This is a strange thing about cognitive work. We can express it as a slogan. The more specific it is, the more general it is, which makes no logical sense whatsoever, but it's true anyway. In other words, the more you can zoom in on a particular instance, the stuff you learn will be more useful when you try to apply it in other instances. Okay, so we got a particular social situation that happened recently, so it won't be too hard to think back about it. Now let's put you back in that situation, at least in your head. Where were you when you were really stressing out about this? In the car on the way over. Great. Were you driving or were you the passenger? What kind of day was it? Okay, can you put yourself right in that car on that day? And here you are, right now, you're driving to this picnic, and there's something scary about it. Something bad might happen. What are you worried might happen? And we'll try to write down all the scary thoughts. I'll spill food on myself. Everybody will want to go swimming, and I don't want to expose my body. I won't be as fun as anyone else. I will insult the boss by accident, and so on and so on. And we'll look at what will happen then. So you do spill food on yourself. And then what happens? People will think I'm a slob, and it'll be completely visible to everyone, and they'll be revolted by me, and they'll avoid talking to me, and I'll be sitting there alone and embarrassed. And it'll often happen like this. The first worry is that something will happen, and then it goes to how other people will judge me. Because social anxiety is almost always about what other people think of me. I'd be fine with spilling food on myself if I was alone. It's their judgment that I'm really afraid of. And one thing we can do is rate how persuasive all of those thoughts are. So, you're going to spill food on yourself. In the car, on the way over, how likely does that seem to be when you're predicting that? How likely does it seem to be? 0 to 100%, let's say. Oh, 70% chance. Okay, great. And how about swimming? How likely is that they're all going to want to go swimming? How likely is that? And so on. And the nice thing about these situations is that now, when we're working on it in therapy, they've already happened. So we can get the thoughts that you had beforehand, and then we compare them with what actually happened. So, did you spill food on yourself? Well, no. I could have, but I didn't. Sarah, though, she had a whole jar of salsa fall in her lap. Perfect. And how did people react to Sarah? What did you think of her? Complete sob? How much of a fuss did people make? Did she stay? Did it look like people couldn't stop thinking about it? Or did the conversation eventually move on? Did anybody talk to her after that? But maybe there's something different between Sarah and you. Imagine that jar of salsa landed in your lap. How different would it have been, do you think? So we can look at the discrepancies between what was predicted and what actually happened. One of the problems with the human mind is that we react to things that we imagine in the future as if they've already actually happened. So our predictions tend to feel real to us. And part of what we want is to recognize when we're tending to over-predict disasters. That way, when we predict disaster next time, we can remind ourselves, well, maybe, but I've thought that before, and it didn't happen. And then we can take our predictions a little bit less seriously. Now, we can also look at our interpretations. How do we know that people hate us? What's our evidence? Do we have any evidence that that's not true? Like, people talked to me who didn't really have to, and I don't think they were just doing it out of obligation. And once we have a sense that some of our thoughts weren't absolutely 100% valid, we can see if there might be other ways of thinking about the same situation. Like in the car, for example, I was thinking completely about social disasters. I wasn't thinking at all about seeing Monica, who was off on maternity leave, and it was nice to see her. So I could think about some other possibilities that might happen. And I can say, no, I probably won't spill a huge amount of food on me. That hasn't happened very often. But if it did, I'd live. I wouldn't have to go home right away. And my evidence of that now is that I can remember that it happened to Sarah and she was fine. People didn't seem to think less of her, right? And I can let go of the expectation that I have to be perfect on this picnic. I don't actually. No one else was. And I don't have to have hours of wonderful conversation in me, And I don't have to be hilarious. All I really have to do is go and sit there. And I'm even choosing to do that. So actually the bar is pretty low. I can do this. I've done it before. And if it isn't the best time ever, doesn't really matter. I'll live. I'll survive whether it's fun or no fun. I'm actually not in any danger. And then we can look at upcoming events that haven't happened yet. That charity event next week, that first session of your night school course. What does your anxious mind predict about those? How likely are those outcomes, really? And how bad a disaster would it be if they actually happened? Could you survive? Have you perhaps already survived much worse in your life? So, could you survive it again? And you can begin getting the sense that all of this work is designed to help you get into those situations that you've been avoiding. But that's the other side of treatment, the behavioral side. And I'll talk about that in the next post.